What if the speed of light was 30 miles an hour?
What if Earth had two suns?
Which cereal mascot would win in a fight?
What if everyone lived underground?
What if it
What
rained
if money
food?
grew on
What
trees?
if pigs could fly?
I don't know if that would actually happen.
It's much easier to store a unicycle than to store a horse.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
Are you guys ready to improve some more sports?
Maybe.
Sure.
Okay, if I was waiting for Ben to respond, I was...
Maybe you threw me for a loop a little bit.
Well, that's because we're not improving real sports. We're doing fake sports.
We're going to improve fictional sports. Yes, fantasy sports that don't actually exist in the real world for one reason or the other. It's something we like to do on the show a bunch of times. We've improved lots of real world sports, but I'm excited to get into these. And as promised in our episode preview, I'm going to start with our first fictional sport that I will improve, which is Quidditch from the Harry Potter universe.
There is a real version of this, right?
Yes, there is online rules for a real life version of Quidditch that you play. Like, I think it's with a football and you run around. And depending on your setups, like I've seen it played with like made hoops. I've seen it played like lawn chairs, a whole bunch of different things. You're basically playing rugby but pretending it's Harry Potter related.
I remember back when we were in college, there were teams that would play it over in the Boston Common, and I would see it when I was walking by there sometimes.
Yeah, it's very much like a college sport where,
Yeah.
like, it's just that age group is playing it. That college age group that we're no longer part of.
Haven't been for a long time.
Yeah.
I know, it's scary.
Still feels like it, though.
My age starts with a 3. Who am I? But Quidditch. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the Harry Potter game, or just want a quick reminder, basically, this game is played above the ground where two teams are flying on broomsticks, and there's two main goals. One of them is scoring goals. There's 3 hoops suspended in the air that if you throw the ball, or specifically the quaffle, through the hoop, you score 10 points. And then there is the golden snitch, which is the most, exciting aspect of the game. There's a tiny little ball that has wings that flits around very fast, very hard to catch. And if you catch that snitch, then it is worth 150 points and the game ends, generally with your victory. So each team is composed of 7 people. There are 3 chasers, 2 beaters, a keeper, and a seeker. The keeper is just the goalie. He blocks the quaffle from going in the hoops. The chasers are basically the regular players. They're the ones that are trying to score primarily. There's 2 beaters who hit away bludgers. So in addition to the quaffle as the main ball and the golden snitch, which is like the bonus points ball, there's also 2 bludgers, which are effectively enchanted cannonballs that just try to bump into players. And the beaters, their job is to hit away the bludgers with bats. And they fly around kind of protecting their team from getting, honestly, significantly injured.
Pretty dangerous sport.
And then the last player is the seeker, who's typically like the best player on the team. He's the only person allowed to catch the golden snitch. So his whole job is to go around and try and catch the thing that's the bonus points. So to me, I'm going to start with my biggest hang up about this, which is the scoring system. The goals are worth 10 points. If you score on the other team, you get 10 points going through the hoop. If you catch the golden snitch, the game immediately ends, and the golden snitch is worth 150 points. Which means, unless you have a 15-goal lead, whoever catches the snitch wins the game. Which really just doesn't make the game work at all, because it's just whoever catches the snitch wins, and the rest of the things that they're doing doesn't matter.
Yeah, could you, end the game in just, 2 minutes?
You could. That's the whole thing. You could end the game in 2 minutes, or it goes the other way if nobody can catch the frickin' snitch.
Oh, so it keeps on going until you catch the snitch?
Yeah.
From the book, according to, I think it was Victor Crumb talking to Harry Potter, the longest Quidditch game lasted over 3 months. That's not okay. That's not good game. It's not a good game.
It's the longest baseball game.
Not 3 months. I think it's 20-something innings. It was played over a couple days.
There have been cricket matches that have gone multiple days, or over a day, I think. But I think that's the closest they can get to, and it's nowhere near months.
Yeah, they're like people had, and the thing is, it's not like it got postponed to the next day and they played again. It was like, oh, they had to get new players to work in shifts so other players could sleep. But I'll say this, I think it's a problem. What does J.K. Rowling think? Because J.K. Rowling herself replied to a tweet that was just, the scoring system of Quidditch makes no sense. From J.K. Rowling's Twitter, it makes total sense. There's glamour in chasing an elusive lucky break, but teamwork and persistence can still win the day. Everyone's vulnerable to blows of fate and obstructive people, and success means rising above them. Quidditch is the human condition. You're welcome.
A lot of things she says are questionable.
You say teamwork and persistence can still win the game. That's not really true. 150 points is a 15-goal lead. It's not if you score 15 goals you win, or if you catch the golden snitch you win. It's if you are leading by over 150 points, and then the other team decides to catch the snitch anyway, then it matters. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
So if the other team is 15 goals ahead, and you're the losing team, then it makes sense for you not to catch the snitch, right?
Exactly. And I won't get into, there's also, like, I actually removed it from my notes because it just gets into too many complications. The league scoring system in Quidditch also includes how many points, you get points based on how many points you win by as well as if you win or lose, which also adds incentives not to catch the snitch at certain times, where if both teams need a big win, they might just both refuse to catch the snitch until they're ahead by 20 goals. Like, you could have a position where, you have two third-place teams fighting over the league, and they both need to win by, 300 points to qualify, and they both know that, so they would just play forever until they have an astronomical lead, which may never happen. So that's a whole nother problem. So, luckily, to kind of to see how this sport got developed, and where this whole golden snitch thing coming in and messing with this game is coming from, there is a book that was released, real life book, Quidditch Through the Ages, which is theoretically, it's an in-fiction book that was released, it's fully written up and released in the world. I think it was part of a charity thing. Quidditch Through the Ages. I will note that the book's market price was 14 sickles and 3 nuts.
Yeah.
KNUTS nuts. Ben, get your head out of the gutter.
Too late.
So here's where the golden snitch came from. The history of the golden snitch, because the golden snitch was not always this little gold mechanical ball with wings. Back in the day, it was a snidget, which was a small spherical actual magic bird. Actual bird in that it was a living magic creature that was just like a little spherical bird that looks like the snitch if it was a real animal. And the chief of the Wizards Council, Barbarous Bragg, just was watching a game, or he was attending a Quidditch game, and he just decided at the start to release a snidget in the middle of the game with a promise of 150 galleons, i.e. real cash money, to whoever could catch it during the course of the game. What ended up happening at that game was a woman in the audience was like, oh my god, animal cruelty, saved the snidget and ran away with it. But the end result was that it still caught on, and then every game going forward had a live snidget in it that was, people were trying to catch during the game. And by caught, it also explicitly means kill. And the only reason they went and evolved and created the mechanical one was they started to deplete the local snidget population to extinction. So that's a fun fact. Bird murder is the reason there's a golden snitch. And the only reason it's still part of that game, even in their own history, is that it just was too popular and they couldn't, get rid of it. So that's kind of that. It's 2 games combined that don't work together. Because now, like I said, there's 3/4 of the balls and 6/7 of the teams are 6 out of 7 of the team members are basically an elaborate sideshow. Nothing besides the one dude catching the snitch matters. But even more so than just function, from a game design perspective, not being particularly good, the sport's also kind of boring, considering it's the top sport specifically for freaking wizards. Who really cares about athletics? Your athletes are able to move around a bit better when they could also, shoot fireballs or explode things at will. Get some excitement going in these things. No one's excited to see people walking broomsticks in the wizarding world. Sure, for us muggles, yeah, hot shit, oh my god, flying around, that's cool. But it's like the scooter of the wizarding world. How many sports do we have that are played on scooters? None.
We should have more.
One scooter sport, maybe.
I do love the idea that the equipment, aside from the flying broomstick, which is admittedly reasonably cool, is just like a goddamn bat. It's just like a bat.
Oh, no, I'll say this. It is a fancy bat in that it's enchanted, and there's a whole back and forth of they had to keep making the cannonballs the bludgers more and more dangerous because the bats kept getting more and more magically reinforced. So, the the metal balls were no longer hard enough, so they had to like go from like lead to iron to make them stronger so that they wouldn't like get beat up too much because they would lose their aerodynamicness. So they decided to just keep upping the danger level on that.
Okay, that's actually pretty hilarious.
It's also kind of hilarious where like the explained reason why you'd want to be a seeker or not is the seeker is like where the best player goes and is the most popular and the most important. But because of that, he's at the most risk of getting killed. That's the trade-off. It's you have to choose if you care about the game enough to want to get murdered while playing it if you want to be a seeker. So, without further ado, here's my proposal. First off, get rid of all the goal scoring nonsense. If the game's going to be about catching the snitch, and apparently we can't make it not about catching the snitch, let's make it about actually catching the snitch. Second, if it's about catching this, we're going to add more snitches, because games could end too quickly, like Chris, you were saying. It could end in 2 minutes if there's just one thing to do. So I'm adding 2 more, and catching snitches is going to be just 2 out of 3. Now we got some room to add some wizarding back in. Again, brooms, kind of boring. We got to do some cool wizard stuff. That's going to be cool even for the wizards. So what I want to see is some transmogrification. So the hoops will no longer be goalposts. The hoops will still be there, but when you go through the goalpost, it'll transform you into a random animal or mythical creature. So now each game already is going to be different, and you go through and boom, you're now a hippogriff. And with that, now we got some place to play. So each of these hoops now is going to get you, there's going to be like, there's 3 hoops, there's basically 3 size categories of creatures that you can go to. And that there's going to be 3 golden snitches corresponding to those sizes. You're going to have kind of 3 sub-play fields. One's going to be real small, where like you go in and you're like a frog or like a mouse or something. Then you have like the mid-sized animals like wolves and eagles and things. And then you got the big hoop that's going to be like dragons and hippogriffs and basilisks and all these crazy giant ones. So you basically have like a big snitch, a medium snitch, and a small snitch. And I'm going to say the players can you just go where you think your team needs help. You go and you see your dude, he turns into a worm. You're like, ah, shit, we're going to need some help in the small battlefield. Let's see if we get a better animal. You know, your guy turns into a dragon. It's like, oh, he can go solo that top thing.
Are they still on brooms? Or are they still flying?
I was debating about that, and I think the answer is yes. So it'll depend on your animal, of course. Not every animal is going to be quite coordinated enough to be on a broomstick, but I think...
Worm on a broom.
Worm on a tiny broom. You just have like those little like coffee stirring, like the little plastic coffee stoppers that look like brooms will be those. And yeah, if your animal can ride a broom, having a broom is still fair game. It really adds a new type of athleticism now that I think about it, because how coordinated are you as a frog? Are you a good frog? Are you good as an eagle? Like, where are you naturally more athletically gifted? And now you got like some stats going on, because pros will have like their specialty animals. It's like, oh man, Victor Crumb turned into a griffin again, so we're fucked because he's just really good as a griffin. If he had turned into a toad, he's really not good at those, so you know he would have trouble. And then so you have like the pros with their stats, like for the animals, like you can change up the pool of creatures between seasons to keep it fresh year after year. And you'll have like multiple exciting things to watch simultaneously, because now like excitement will be happening on 3 fronts. It's going to be like the NFL Red Zone, but like with just one wizard game. And the scoring will make sense. You can actually just like have some game tension with, you know, a simple 2 out of 3. You don't need to have 150 bonus point special to make your game work, because it doesn't make it work. And that, my friends, is my plan for improving Quidditch.
I like it.
I mean, it's not a bad plan. Way more magical.
Exactly. It's wizards. You literally could do anything. Anyway. Ben, what did you cover? Are you as angry about it as I am?
So I came into mine quite angry and became less angry as I learned more through the power of knowledge. I looked at Pokemon battles. So for those of you who don't know what Pokemon battles are, which I feel like, not gonna lie, has to be a very, very small segment of the people who will be listening to this podcast. Pokemon was a video game from, I guess, the 90s? Was the first one in the 90s?
90s is safe to say.
90s is safe to say? Yeah. Game Boy age, where you collect these cute / sometimes scary monsters that have all these cool abilities they do, and basically dogfight them. You know, that's pretty much what it comes down to. You raise them and you fight them, and that's kind of what you do.
But they have cool abilities.
They have really cool abilities. Sometimes they're an actual dragon. Sometimes they're a 12-pound fuzzball that sings real good. Sometimes they're a weird burly muscle man with 4 arms. It could be anything.
Sometimes they're a lamp.
Sometimes they're a lamp. They got a little bit carried away and ran out of ideas as time went on. My favorite actually of that is, there's always, like the legendary Pokemon that at first were like these big, god birds and stuff, and then eventually have become like wolf holding shield or wolf holding sword.
Or the ghost that just enchants appliances, where he's just like, well, I am just a flying washing machine.
Yep. Anyway. In the games, the way the battles work is pretty simple. You have up to 6 Pokemon. You send them out one at a time. They beat on each other until one of them falls unconscious, and then the winner is the person whose team still has anyone on it who's not unconscious. The game calls it fainting, but I think that's either a mistranslation or trying to kind of break it gently to the kids playing it. They're unconscious at best.
I mean, you bring them to the hospital and they get better, so it's not like they're dead.
Well, not dead, but like they didn't faint. You don't faint from getting hit a bunch. That's not what fainting is. The other thing about the Pokemon battles is that obviously there is a whole like structure to this. And the idea is there's the Pokemon League. The way the league works is there are 8 gyms around. Each gym has a leader who is kind of like its, gym champion kind of. For some reason, each of those gyms always has a particular type of Pokemon in it. So all the Pokemon there will be electric type or grass type or whatever, which goes against basically everything anyone tells you to do when making a team in Pokemon. But it's, I guess these people have their kink or whatever. So
they're all very eccentric. Like he has all the electric Pokemon, and his personality is like, hey, I'm electric.
Right, exactly. That's kind of how
like
it goes.
It's just all very on brand. It's all about branding, Ben.
It really is about branding. If you defeat that gym leader, you get a badge. If you get all 8 badges, you get to fight the Elite 4, who are like the 4 super trainer type people. And then eventually the current champion. If you beat all of them, you become the champion. Flaws inherent in this system. 1, it's pretty easy to just like, through the power of persistence, get 8 badges.
Well, for gifted young 10-year-old boys.
Well, yeah, that's maybe the best point in favor of that is that any random 10-year-old can do it. It doesn't take, a brain genius to figure out that if there's a gym full of living plants, you find something that breathes fire and go to town, right? Like, it's not that complicated. And then once you have these 8 badges, suddenly you're just, stringing off 5 lucky wins in a row into being the champion of Pokemon, apparently. Which feels like maybe not the most rigorous system for determining this. And I was all ready to go into this whole, different structure to do with this, you can do all this and in a much more consistent way. And then I found out that apparently, so I knew, and you may also know, there was also a Pokemon anime. And in that, there is actually a pretty big change to this whole system. So, 1, there are more than 8 gyms. It's just that in order to get to the next stage of competition, you have to collect 8 badges. It could be from any of the 8 gyms. You have to go around, go to 8 of them, get the badges. And then you can go to the Pokemon League Conference, which is basically what I was going to suggest, a large-scale tournament. Where you go there, it's kind of like the Olympics. There's very much a like Olympic torch analog where there's a big torch with a flame on it or whatever and everything. There's this multi-day thing where there's, qualifying tournaments where people get weeded out who aren't ready yet. And eventually you get down to like a top 16. And those people all fight in like a single elimination tournament. And then whoever wins that is the person who can go and attempt to challenge the Elite Four and become the champion. And this is obviously a way better system. There's not this, perpetual being a contender once you just kind of beat 8 people randomly. But there still is a major problem overall in Pokemon battles, which is really just, when you sit down and look at it, why are we only fighting? Like, Pokemon have all these weird abilities, and all we do is make them hit each other. And they justify it in the game by saying Pokemon fight on their own. That's like a thing they do, and like they enjoy it, apparently, which I always thought was a kind of weird thing.
Dogfighting's fine. Dogs eat other animals in the
right.
wild.
The dogs love it. But it always felt very, constrained to me that if all you're going to do is fight, of course you're going to ignore the weird, like, large mouse versus the literal dragon, right? So my solution to really make this whole system just sing a little bit more is move outside of just fighting. What I propose is basically for each of these conferences, we'll keep this sort of conference system because I think that does actually work pretty well. I think at the start of it, you do basically, or maybe slightly before, so you have a little bit of time to, do some last minute training. You do basically a randomized decathlon where, yes, there will be fighting in there, probably with different types. You'll have like sumo and just the traditional Pokemon battles, of course, and all that in there. But also, like, I want to see Machamp, the 4-armed wrestler / bodybuilder, I want to see him, like, knitting real good. Like, I think he could do that. He has 4 arms, right? Like, that'd be fun.
Knitting in a decathlon.
Yeah, like, there are so many things these Pokemon can do that I want to give some of the more, let's say, unique ones a chance to shine. The ones that maybe can't survive getting punched by a 4-armed bodybuilder. I think that's really my main takeaway, is that I feel like we are putting these Pokemon in a box they don't belong to be in, where all they can be is a fighter. And whereas I think that they have many other skills we can showcase instead.
Why isn't there like a Pokemon Olympics game? There should be.
There really should be.
I'm going to make a semantic point for some of our Poke fans out there who are very familiar with the games, myself included. In some of the games, they have introduced non-fighting Pokemon competitions.
That is true. There's there's
a beauty contest one, and I think there is actually one area that has like 2 or 3 Olympic type sports, like racing, I think is one of them. It's probably like racing, weightlifting, and something that's not strength speed based.
Chess or some shit. Who knows? Yeah,
archery or some finesse type nonsense. But also to your point, Ben, is that nobody ever cared about any of these things.
Right. Because all that matters is the fighting.
All that matters.
We need to rework our reward system here. Let these other things shine.
We need knitting.
I just really like the idea of Machamp knitting. I just wanted to bring that up. I think it would be very funny. Because, like, ideally, what you would do, you select for a team of 6, right? But you wouldn't know what they'd be doing until you got there. So you'd have to have, like, a balanced team that could do any of these things.
You gotta have a Pokemon that has arms.
Right,
At least
that's
one
kind of...
Pokemon
And he has 4 of them.
Yeah.
Why do we not have more shows that are just get a group of individuals that you think are generally talented, and we're just gonna have you do some sorts of I mean, I guess it's just random competitions, but like a very specifically, like, you build a professional team of people who are good at stuff.
We
like
are
right.
basically just describing the Olympics.
Well, but you don't know what the events are.
Right, exactly.
It would be like if you have to
Okay,
show
yeah.
up with just 6 athletes.
Yeah. I guess unrelated to our actual question, but speaking of the Olympics and just athletes, I saw a suggestion once where we should do the Olympics where each country only gets to send one person who does all the events.
Well, now you just ruined our How Would You Improve the Olympics episode.
I did. That's just the answer.
It lasts for like, how many events are in the Olympics? Like,
Oh, man. Too many.
how many events are in the Olympics?
I mean, it gets inflated because there's like 40 swimming events, and you probably cut back on some of those, but...
I don't think this is right, because it says the 2020 Summer Olympics include 33 sports. The 2022 Winter Olympics will include 7 sports. I don't think either of those are true.
No, that's not... Okay, how could it possibly be 33 sports?
A total of 33 sports and 339 events.
That could be right. 7 for the Winter Olympics feels very low.
Is it just like downhill,
Hold on, wait.
ice related?
Hold on, is it literally just like, okay, there's, skiing. This can't be, hold on.
Skiing, skating,
Well, because there's figure skating and speed skating. Those
I
are
don't
like
know what they
different
count
sports.
as a sport / event.
Curling, hockey. God, what sports were in the Winter Olympics, huh? Luge?
Bobsledding?
Is Luge still, or, yeah?
Yeah, according I'm on Olympics.com, and Winter Olympic sports does have more than 7, but it's like 14. It's alpine skiing, biathlon, bobsleigh, cross country, curling, figure skating, freestyle skiing, ice hockey, luge, Nordic combined, short track, speed skating, skeleton, ski jumping, snowboard, and speed skating. Speed skating has 2. There's more than this.
There has to be more than that.
Is there only this many sports and we just feel like there's a billion?
I don't know. All right, anyway, long story short, we need to make Pokemon knit. Chris, what did you do?
So for my fictional sport, I chose Podracing from Star Wars, specifically Episode 1 of Star Wars. I think Episode 1's the only one it shows up in.
That sounds right. Yeah.
As far as I know.
Yeah, I think it's just episode 1.
But it does exist throughout like all the timeline of Star Wars, obviously. So how do you make pod racing better? Pod racing is basically just super fast racing, and my impulse to make racing better is just to make it faster and more dangerous. But pod racing is already like very, very, very fast and also very, very dangerous.
Yeah,
Deadly even
it's kind of
sometimes.
capped out at the moment.
Yeah. I was going to say that, like, if the question was how would I improve NASCAR, it would just be to make it pod racing.
Pod racing? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm already at a good spot with pod racing, I think. I don't
All right,
really
cool.
think I
That'll
need
do it.
to. Yeah, I don't need to change pod racing at all. So instead, I want to try to improve the spectator experience of pod racing. Because right now, in episode 1, it shows bleachers, just like really big bleachers with a bunch of people at the starting line. And that's basically it. So the majority of the race takes place away from the bleachers, and then the spectators only see the racers when they start the race, when they finish a lap, and then when they finish the race. And I watched a bunch of clips. As far as I could tell in the movie, there aren't any like TV screens, or like there's no jumbo screen or anything. So when the racers aren't near the bleachers, they're kind of just sitting there doing nothing. So I wanted to figure out, like, how long does the audience actually see the racers during the race? Because pod racers are really, really fast. So they probably don't see them for that long. So according to the Star Wars fandom page, the pod racer's top speed is around 900 kilometers per hour, or 560 miles per hour. And on a clear day on Earth with no obstructions, based on the curvature of the Earth, we can see an object 2.7 miles away from where we are before it dips below the horizon. Now, pod racing takes place in the movie. It takes place on a bunch of different planets, but in the movie, we see it take place on Tatooine. And Tatooine is actually smaller than Earth. Earth is 7,900 miles in diameter, and Tatooine is 6,500 miles in diameter. So being slightly smaller means that it has a higher curvature, which means that we can see a shorter distance before it dips below the horizon. It's only slightly shorter, so on Tatooine, we can see 2.5 miles away, assuming there are no obstructions. So that means that from the bleachers, we'd be able to see a total of 5 miles as the pod racers are approaching us and leaving us. So that's a total of 32 seconds. That's assuming that there are no obstructions, but there are obstructions. In pod racing, obstacles are a very big part of it. Big chunks of the race take place between rock formations. They're going through canyons and stuff, and that's what makes it more interesting. It'd be boring if there were no obstacles. So I just pulled a random number. I'm going to say that for like a 1 mile stretch at the bleachers, there's no obstacles. That's when they're crossing the finish line. And then the rest of it has obstacles. So you can only see them for that 1 mile. And based on that, the audience really only sees the racers for 6 seconds as they pass by. Now, in the movie, the race lasts 7 minutes and it goes for 2 laps. So what happens for the spectators is they see the racers for 3 seconds when it starts. Then they just sit there for 3.5 minutes doing nothing. Then they see the racers come back for 6 seconds. Then they sit for another 3.5 minutes and do nothing. And then they see the last 3 seconds. So they really only see 3% of the race.
Ben, remind me, is this a better or worse action to viewing ratio than football?
It's similar. Slightly worse.
Yeah, I forget the number, but the amount of actual game time in a football game compared to like the length of the event is like...
I'm pretty sure it was single-digit percentage, but...
Yeah, we've covered it before because you answered how would you improve football, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not counting on people listening to this episode having heard whatever episode we happen to mention that in.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was like in the
what number
20s or something.
Something like that. Yeah, so they only see 3% of the race, and it's really the least interesting part of the race because there are no obstacles, they're just going straight. So how can we make this more interesting for the spectators? My instinct is to make the bleachers move with the pod racers so that you can like see the action more. So I looked at like moving transport vehicles because I wanted to use an existing Star Wars vehicle, like one that actually exists. I didn't want to just like make up a thing. So I found a transport vehicle. It's called the K-79 S-80 Imperial Troop Transport. It's a ground vehicle that's used to transport stormtroopers. And it has like 3 slots on either side on the exterior of the vehicle where like people can stand. So I felt like this is perfect for people that are trying to watch this race. They can go into these slots, and then just get a whole bunch of these vehicles, and they're on the racetrack with the pod racers. They're in the action. It's a lot more exciting. The one problem is that these vehicles, they only go 93 miles per hour compared to the pod racers, which go 560 miles per hour. So it's not nearly fast enough. So we need to solve that somehow. So the 2.5 mile distance, like max distance before it goes down below the horizon, was based on if your eyes are 5 feet above the ground. But that distance gets higher as you go higher up into the sky. So obviously if you're higher up, then you can see further. So I figured, why don't we do this? Why don't we we're in Star Wars. We have ships that can fly. Obviously we can do this. And it allows you to like see into the canyons and rock formations. It just makes the whole experience a lot better. So the Imperial Troop transport is a ground vehicle, so that it can't actually fly. But there is something called a low-altitude assault transport carrier, aka a tank lifter. It's designed for, I think it was originally designed to carry an ATTE, which is like a different version of the walkers, kind of. But it can also carry our vehicle. It specifically said it could carry our vehicle as well. So these vehicles can go 385 miles per hour. It's still not as fast as a pod racer, but since it can fly, it doesn't need to be because we can see further. So it'll just stay above the track and you can get a whole view of the track from above. And you just get a whole bunch of them. Now, even though these are transport vehicles, they also are gunships too. So they have guns. So we might as well use the guns, right? Because they're there. You don't want to waste the guns. Why would you do that? So the Imperial Troop Transport has 2 laser guns on the front and a laser turret on the back. And then the tank lifter has 4 laser cannons and 4 rockets. So basically just the audience, the spectators, maybe if they pay extra, get VIP tickets, then they get to shoot these at the racers down below. And it'll add some obstacles for them.
Adding some obstacles is a really tame way of saying I'm giving the audience guns and rockets.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to make it more fun for them. And then I figured since we're already using ships that were used by the Galactic Empire, like these are Empire ships that were used to transport stormtroopers, we might as well just put stormtroopers in them instead of normal people. We'll just use pod racing as target practice for the stormtroopers because they need the training. They can't hit anything. And that's the purpose of pod racing now. It's just target practice for stormtroopers. And let's be honest, the racers are probably going to be fine. It's probably just an added obstacle, and they'll probably finish the race, and it'll just be more exciting.
I mean, that might just already be the case. I think it's canon because really early on in the first Star Wars movie, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi was looking at the blaster marks. He's like, only Imperial Trooper marks are this accurate, and maybe the Tatooine ones with the pod racing are just that much better than all the other stormtroopers.
Yeah, exactly. So
maybe he was pleasantly surprised when he went to the Death Star. I was like, wow, these guys can't shoot for shit. I was worried for nothing.
Yep.
All right, and with that, that'll bring us to our Would You Rather portion of the episode. Ben, are you ready?
Sure.
Would you rather 5% of the population have telepathy or 5% of the population have telekinesis? You are not part of the 5% that has it.
Ooh, okay. I don't know who has which one.
Yeah, is this a public thing or?
I think you generally know some percentage of the population has one of these two abilities. Like, you know that people exist with this, but you don't know who it is. There's no like public registry or like force people to know what it is.
So my gut instinct is that I would rather people have telekinesis. Simply because if someone has telekinesis and uses it, it's much more obvious.
Yeah, it's obvious that they're using it. There's a lot of privacy issues with the telepathy.
Like, effectively, if 5% of people have telepathy, you have to act as though everyone has telepathy.
Yeah. I feel like if 5% had telepathy, then some laws would come up that, like, you have to declare that you have it or something.
But how would you prove that someone has telepathy?
I guess you can't.
What's my card? Any card? Guess my card.
I'm just seeing the like the replicant test in Blade Runner, but it's just like a guy with a playing card. Like, what suit is this?
Yeah, but I mean, they could easily lie if they don't want
Right,
to.
exactly. Yeah, they could
Assuming
lie
there's
about
no
it.
like biological change.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, if you had someone with telepathy, you would know if they have telepathy. Hmm?
Oh yeah,
That's
That's
true.
true.
Actually. See, I don't like this world. This world is scary and dystopian.
You could hire someone that you know has telepathy to become the telepathy verifier.
I don't know. I feel like I would rather have the ability that is more obvious out in the world than the one that is entirely, unverifiable.
I have the same gut reaction, although I am thinking about telekinesis crimes.
Go
Like,
on.
What?
Like, home security doesn't really work very well on someone with telekinesis.
I mean, a camera does.
Like, you could destroy the camera.
I mean, you can do that now.
Yeah, you
Like,
could do that now. Like, how does this telekinesis work? Do you have to like see the thing?
I think for the sake of this hypothetical, we're gonna soup it up to both pretty strong and pretty easy to use telekinesis.
Okay. So like from a really far distance, you don't have to see it, and you're pretty strong with it. You can lift heavy things.
Yeah, you're let's say you're kind of a tour de force, main character 2/3 of the way through the movie powerful with your telekinesis. So now you can have people that are individually very destructive if they wanted to be.
See, I still think it's way easier to enforce telekinesis crimes than it is telepathy crimes.
Oh yeah, enforcing it. Yeah, you can arrest the telekinesis people, but also then you have to imprison them somewhere somehow, which also would be difficult.
We'd figure out a way.
I'm confident in our ability to incarcerate anybody regardless of their powers.
I mean, they're still just one person. Like, if you put enough guards on them, then they can't really do anything.
well, it's 5% of the people. I mean, they're all gonna be criminals.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
I'm really trying to play devil's advocate. I'm really trying to find the thing. Telepathy is a lot grosser and a lot more invasive of a power, I think, for other people to have. And I think that's kind of the easy one. But I could see an argument for destructive criminals abusing their actual super. Telepathy is a superpower, but it's not really a superpower in that it's a lot easier to subdue somebody who has telepathy. Even if you know everything. Omniscience is not omnipotence. You can know all the stuff that's going to happen to you and be able to not stop it because you're just a dude. Oh, I've determined that the SWAT team coming to my house is intending to arrest me is not going to stop you from getting arrested.
Yeah. I think if the question was what power would I rather have myself, then I think I would choose telekinesis.
Yeah, this one's specifically the opposite. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think if you really got... You know what? I'm going to go with telekinesis. I think if you really get to the end of it, telepathy might be easier to deal with. Telepathic people might be easier to deal with than telekinetic people. And telepathic people could also do good. I mean, therapy becomes a lot more of a, probably a lot more effective of an industry.
I actually have one place where telekinesis is bad. I do have one, which is that all of our existing spectator sports no longer work. Pretty hard to sink a basketball when an opposing fan can just block it.
Now the tape reviews are going to include physicists doing back of the napkin calculations.
Right.
Oh, that ball hit the rim and bounced off at a 37-degree angle? Uh-oh.
Yeah, and then you can't tell who, you can't pin down who actually did that.
So I still think that overall, well, okay, stick with sports actually for a second. It does mean that basically all pro athletes would be telekinetic, which would be pretty cool. However, I think overall telepathy is still probably way worse to have in the world.
Now I'm thinking of telepathy, other games like chess and poker and stuff.
Chess is kind of interesting, actually.
I am thinking about but maybe you remember this was when we went to our friend's wedding in California, and we stayed at that Airbnb, and they had a bunch of random books on the shelf, and one of them was the strategy guide to rock paper scissors.
Oh yeah.
And I swear to Christ, this was a honest to God book about actually trying to be someone writing a whole book about rock paper scissors strategy. And one of the chapters was about what to do if your opponent is actually telepathic. And it was like, okay, so then that way, if you want to throw scissors, make sure you think paper so that they throw, or you should think rock so they throw paper so that you beat them. But it did warn you, don't get into the habit too strongly because you might mess up your throws against non-telepathic people if you're too much into the thinking of the other one habit.
But then they'll hear you thinking that you're thinking that and that you're going to throw something else.
But then you're thinking that you're going to think that to not think that, and you just keep leveling up.
But then they'll think that you thought that.
But but you're also telepathic, so they're thinking you think you thought that.
You're both okay.
So maybe rock paper scissors becomes a real sport. All right, I'm gonna stick on my devil's advocate side. I'm gonna say telekinesis. I think there's a shape of a problem worse than telepathy in there. That's gonna be. It's gonna ruin more things.
You mean you don't want people to have telekinesis, or you do?
Correct. I'd rather they have telepathy.
Okay.
Maybe I just think the world could use some more honesty.
I'd rather they have telekinesis.
I would rather they have telekinesis as well.
All right. Well, that does it for that. If you have determined what the real telekinesis problem is and want to let us know, feel free to send us an email with that. Or if you have any ideas for questions, we're more than happy to receive listener questions and try and incorporate them into the podcast. Best is direct via email. Send it to absurdhypotheticals@gmail.com. Other things you can do to help the show, leave us a review. Reviews are a great way to get people interested in the show or people who find the show. I always check the reviews before I listen to anything. And if there's not enough of them or if they stink, I tend to click away. So reviews are important. You can do that in your favorite podcast player, wherever you're listening to this. And of course, you can't do better support than direct, hard, cash money, dinero donations. So if you got some sickles, nuts, and galleons lying around and you want to send them our way, www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals. Click on that Become a Patron button. You get access to our bonus content we release every month, specifically for our patrons. It's behind a singular dollar paywall. $1 of Muggle money gets you right in there and unlocks everything for you.
Plus tax, I think. I think plus tax.
Plus tax? Oh man.
Maybe, well, I think.
I just promoted it, Chris, and now I'm learning that it's not such a good deal after all.
I know.
It's still a good deal. The tax, although sad, is not really changing the needle much. Anyhow, if you don't have that extra tax money to spare to us, you are more than welcome to join us next week for our regular scheduled episode, where we answer the following question. What if people didn't need to do things? And by things, I mean like important things, like breathe, or sleep, or eat, drink, that kind of thing. It's a grab bag.